Sounds good.
So.
Oh, I gotta make sure something real quick. Yeah, I did. There we go.
Perfect.
All right.
So I'm
one
gonna
more
shut my
question
mic off.
we've received. Is there a standard set of submission rules that most
Okay.
publishers sort of adhere to, or do they differ per publishing house?
How many publishing houses are there? And how many
Lots.
standards are there?
I can still hear you. Yep. Perfect.
welcome. This is the Writers Conduit panel with about how to build a world without racism. Well, because we don't have all of our panelists here today, it's going to be lack of discrimination, without discrimination, or more inclusivity. More inclusivity. I am SiobhantheWriter. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the host. And beside me is LJ Stanton, also pronouns of she, her. And I guess she's the lead.
Woohoo! So, as Siobhan introduced, thank you. I am LJ Stanton. I am the author of The Dying Sun, which is a book that I wrote in a world based off of Middle Eastern, African, and Asian mythologies and cultures. And part of the reason that I went and developed my own world was because I am a disabled author and I wanted to see additional inclusivity, both getting away from kind of that Eurocentric model that we are always seeing in fantasy, especially in the last 20 years or longer. And which is totally cool. It's just we're opening up these worlds, so it's the time to make more. And since people are, coming here to a panel about inclusivity, it's clear everybody else is also wanting to know, how do you build a world and include disabled people or just people who are discriminated against in a way that is as inoffensive as possible?
All right, and thank you for the follows and welcome, Raiders.
Yeah,
Hello,
welcome, Raiders.
Gemma. So, how's everyone feeling? Well, I'm feeling pretty good. How about you, LJ?
Okay. I'm actually dealing with a migraine, but I am pushing through, and I am so stoked to be here. So I am excited.
Hello, Mez.
Hey, Mez.
Yeah, so, I mean, my world has its racism. Oh, sorry, not necessarily racism. Well, sort of.
Yeah.
But it has its conflicts. But it's also trying to deal with how to work around those conflicts.
Exactly.
And sort through things. I also have one culture in my world, which I have loosely based on the indigenous peoples or First Nations or Native Americans, depending on how people want to be called.
Yeah.
Usually in Canada and the US, it's usually indigenous or First Nations.
Yeah.
And they have the Two-Spirit. Whoops! I thought I had fixed that. Thank you, Story Girl. I thought I'd fixed that, but I guess I hadn't. It says we're on editors where I find them, but I thought I'd fix that portion.
Oh.
Yep. Maybe if I refresh it. It shouldn't.
So it looks like it's correct on my end.
Yeah, it's refreshed.
So that might just be a Twitch needing to update. It takes its time, unfortunately.
Yep.
But yeah, so as you're saying about Two-Spirit.
Yeah, because in that nation, right, those who are considered Two-Spirit, which is your MTF, your FTM, your genderqueer, your non-binary, they're the leaders of the people there, because they can look at the situation from both sides of the position type thing.
And that is so important to be considering, especially when you are doing your world building, is the looking at what do other people bring to the table. What do things that you might consider to be different or consider to be disabling or discriminated against, what do they bring to the table that makes it easier for them to solve a conflict that could be in your world? And again, that's something that should be looked at again in our own world, but we can use fiction to help, correct issues in the real world. You know, you can get people to open their minds a little bit more when you start easing them into a situation using fiction.
Yep. And Koyo- Koyoliolio, um, in my world, it isn't called Two Spirit. It's called Twin Souled.
I love that.
Like I said, it's based on the Two Spirit of the indigenous. Yet, in order, because I'm not wanting to steal or appropriate,
Yes.
because I'm not native or indigenous. I was raised near indigenous peoples. I was taught by some of them, actually, so I have a healthy respect for them.
Yes. And that is the thing, is that there can be a fine line between appreciation and appropriation. But the I think for how my understanding of that line, it comes down to a level of research, and it also comes into the way you're telling those stories. So I cannot write a story about the challenges of being a Black woman. I cannot write a story about the challenges of being a trans woman or any of those kinds of things, because I don't know enough deep down about those problems. But I can have those characters and their struggles in my book that is about something else and how those things shape it.
Yeah, I mean, my MC in my story is actually trans, MTF. I
Mm-hmm.
have other trans characters in there, like FTM and non binary and genderqueer. I
Yeah.
have gay couples. I mean, right now, my MC and the supporting MC are in a
Mm-hmm.
relationship. Both are currently male,
Yeah.
right? I have a couple of other characters who are supporting characters that are female and in a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Tangentially, one of my favorite reviews that I have on my book, it is a 1-star review, and it basically comes down to oh my god, there's gay people in this, and women do masculine things, and I was just like, this book was not written for you, I think.
Well, the way I look at it is, because if I got something like that, I'd be going, thank you. Because you're actually
Oh,
getting
exactly.
real world out into, and you're letting them know that my book is
Yes.
based around the real world. Because I'm sorry,
Exactly.
I know women truck drivers. I know
Yeah.
women construction workers. I know women welders. And
Yes.
they compete for those positions with the men, and most of the times they excel
Oh yeah.
because they have to
And
work
that's
twice as hard to prove
yeah.
themselves.
Exactly. And so, with these being struggles that we know as people and as women, it is something that can be considered when you are doing your world building of what are the roots of these discriminatory practices. Is it coming from cultural biases? Is it coming from religious biases? And are those biases something that exist in the world that you're creating? Because if it doesn't exist in the world you're creating, then why is it there?
Yep.
So I have, I've based heavily off of, as I said, Middle Eastern, African, Asian mythologies. But when you look at like the cradle of civilization in our world, that have the Abrahamic religions, and then we have some discriminatory issues from those religions. But my book doesn't have any of those religions in my book, which means none of those biases should exist in this world,
Except here's
which
the
is
funny thing.
important.
If you actually look into the Abrahamic religions and what they actually teach, the biases
Yes.
are not there.
Yes.
It is the dogma, not the religion.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's again a good thing to point out, an important thing to point out for the distinctions when you're working on your world building, is the what are you pulling from, where are your inspirations, and what is the most accurate way you can pull from them and also still remain respectful. So as you said, like it's the dogma around these religions instead of the actual religion. So it makes it so that when you pull from, say, I pulled a lot from Islamic and, Islamic religion, and it is honestly, it's a very feminist religion in many ways. So it's okay, I can have a matriarchy in this world, and it's not wow, that is too far, we have to suspend disbelief a little too much for that. No, it's still something that is very founded in our own world, and there are going to be connections then that are made for inclusivity's sake with people who are generally discriminated against, especially like in the States and North America, to be able to do like, oh look, this is a safer book for me to read because the research has gone into it to say, hey, this is a little bit better representation, even without it being straight, pure representation.
Yeah. Thing is my world is based around a lot of Celtic mythologies,
Mm-hmm.
and part of the Celtics, right? Their gender biased wasn't there. If
Mm-hmm.
you can, the only difference was in the religious aspect.
Yeah.
Because if you're capable of doing it, go ahead and do it. I mean, look at Boudica, or as other
Yeah.
people know as Boudicca or
Yeah.
Boudica. So she be, she led an army, her and her
Yeah.
daughters, and just
Exactly.
gave Rome such a bloody nose.
Oh man, yeah. Rome did not Rome did not end well with all of her. They did not end their encounters with Boudica very well most of the time.
Yeah, until the very end when they got her in that dead end valley and that blind valley.
Yeah. Yeah. But she gave them a good run for their money.
Yep. But I mean, that's just it. If you look at the cultures, I mean, okay, Norse culture. The
Mhm.
father would go away, come back 2 years later, and have a 1 year old son or a 6 month old son. He never
Yeah.
asked where the child came from. That's his
And these
son.
are things, yeah. And these are knowing more about different cultures. Doing that research is very important when you're starting to build your own fantasy world, because we don't have to be confined to pulling from one area or another. You can look at the broad aspects of history, you can look at these broad concepts and pull from them. And the more research that you do, the better your world building will be. I mean, there is this point where you have to actually stop and build your world, but the more research you can do, and even if it's something like watching extra history, extra credits, extra sci-fi, I love that channel. Watching them and getting even like extra mythology, all of those things that can give you a great starting point for an area to go and an area to look at, to be able to then start incorporating that into your world.
I mean, even YouTube has ways to do that. Because you've
Yes.
got channels that specifically go, like, I watch Time Team a lot for the
Mhm.
archaeology. Because it shows older time periods and it shows the progression.
Yeah.
And so it's
That's
like,
actually a really good point too, especially when you're thinking of world building for fantasy. There's a lot of kind of medieval and Iron Age fantasy out there that if you are starting to want to work on fantasy for Bronze Age, that is I would say, a market that has not been as saturated and has not been as explored. Or at
yeah.
least I am less familiar with books that are in there, and I'm very excited to see more books set in those time periods too.
I mean, yes, my time period is sort of medieval Renaissance.
Yes, same
Yet,
mine.
yet, the thing that my main character actually knows is proper flint napping. Because of the fact that they're part of an order that started about over 1,000 years ago, right? And in order to show tradition,
Mm-hmm.
certain traditional things.
Yes. And that too is important to know where for your world building, where your history of your world came from, what has been built upon. I know for me as a horsewoman, I wanted to make sure that there was a heavy horse culture influence. So of course I went and I looked at the Bedouin to be able to poke at and take from, as well as other cultures that have a strong tie with horses,
Like the
such as even the
Mongols.
Turks and whatnot, and the Mongols, exactly. And the different ways that they have integrated horses into their histories so that I could have a cultural progression from a very nomadic equine society into one that has massive cities, and what would have changed to create that different shift, and then the archaeology and the architecture and all of that that would be in the world that you get to see with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's one of the nation that I have that is loosely based on the indigenous people.
Mhm.
Also has some of the old, uh, what people would call the Pictish uh, buildings
Oh,
with the
cool.
stones dug under the ground.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the thing is they're in a flat plain,
Yeah.
and stone was plentiful in this one area, but not everywhere else. So everywhere else has got like wattle and daub and thatch roofs. But the
Hmm.
stone is actually starting to spread out, and they're all building underneath, so it gives more area for farming,
Yep.
as well as now they're protected from the winds. Winds aren't going to rip their roofs off, and
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And it's just, these are the things that are important to consider and think on of when you're world building in general. And one of the things that I do like to enjoy when thinking about that is the, okay, how then do I want to build up this world so that it's they look after the least in that society? You know, especially when looking at worlds that have, say, magic or something that we definitely don't have, and have it be a, okay, how do we incorporate this? How do I incorporate this into my world? And how would that change who is the least in the society, who is, discriminated against, and whatnot? And
yeah,
then the struggles that might come from those different magic systems.
yeah. I mean, yeah, 'cause there's magic in my world, but it's tied to your life essence.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So you have to be careful when you use it, because if you use too much or too fast, you can either kill yourself or burn yourself out.
Yeah. I like that. It's actually funny because it's a very similar system between your system and mine, because mine is also very much tied to a person's health, to a person's genetics, and the more physically fit a person may or may not be has a very strong impact on whether or not they can do magic. And if they overdo it, then they end up passing out or killing themselves.
Well, here's the thing.
Uh,
Who says that the physically fit are the ones who can do magic?
yes, exactly. So
Because
that is I should clarify, since there are disabled people who do use magic in my world, it is a matter of you keeping yourself healthy, whatever that means for your body.
and I'm pretty sure in your world the ones who are disabled actually have a stronger sense of the magic.
The one, absolutely. It is definitely a different case because of wanting to show off having disabilities and having it not be the end of the world.
Yeah,
And
what they're
so
doing,
giving
like,
the
so what I thought was,
combination.
because what I was thinking was, it's not necessarily wanting to show off. It's
Yes,
wanting to prove that they're just as capable as others, whether with or without the
exactly.
disability.
Exactly.
It's a lot like the fight panel that we had yesterday.
I'm sad I missed it.
Oh, it's all about who wants it more. What's
Yeah,
at stake?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Like that is the most interesting way to work a fight, is who actually is going to be, even if it's not necessarily an underdog fight, but yeah, who wants it more? Who needs it?
What's at stake,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I've got a fight scene that where the protagonist is outmatched,
Mm-hmm.
and he's distracted as well because,
That makes it a little harder.
well, no, because the guy he's fighting
Mhm.
had just stabbed his mentor,
Never mind then.
right? So it's like,
That is an excellent trope, by the way. The mentor, injury, mentor, dying. I love working with that trope. It is fun.
yep, and then of course the guy finds out that on the blade of because the bad guy pulls a second blade,
Hmm.
finds out it's poison because the bad guy's gloating.
Yeah, never
All it
monologue.
all it'll
Never
take. No,
monologue.
only thing is he's gloating while he's also
Yeah.
taunting because he knows
Yes,
he's
I
better.
should say. I say, as a person who loves villains, it always breaks my heart when they monologue, because it's like, oh, you guys are doing it. You're going to get caught up in your own monologuing. You're going to
Oh,
get caught up in
he
it.
didn't because he was throwing out little jabs,
Ah.
like just to distract.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't actually this monologue. It was
Yeah.
parry this. Oh, come on, you get right type stuff. Just the distracting jabs, and so and it's like all it's gonna take is one cut, one little tiny cut. I don't even have to hurt you.
Yeah,
Just get it into your bloodstream.
absolutely. And those are also important things to be able to build into your world, are those kinds of poisons. It's the what is it that makes that poison? So that you're also designing your rules then.
Yep.
Um, for your world.
And
And
I mean,
with
they already, he's already
those
the
rules, you have to make sure that again you're not falling into those tropes.
yep. I mean, the MCU was already dealing with a magical poison previously. He didn't get hit with it. His
Yeah.
partner did, and so did the head of the House of Healing.
Yeah.
So I mean, no one says magic is pure.
Oh God, no. Oh. Which again, it pulls into all of your world building and where you're pulling from for the design of your magic. You know, since there are many cultures that do have, you know, different cultures that do have magic or have methods of using magic.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the again doing all of that research so you know even what things are acceptable to pull from without becoming blasphemous or harming the people that you're trying to be inspired by.
Not only that, I mean, if you pull too much and have to
Mm-hmm.
release it, who is it going to be in the blast radius?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Just looking at chat. Lean narratively towards the character who's the most to lose. Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Oh, did I forget to? Ah, I see what the problem
Did you?
is. I forgot one
Oh,
thing
oh
on the
no.
overlay itself. I see where it is. Okay, just thank you. I need to change.
I made sure I got chat up and whatnot so we can see you guys.
That.
Which feel free to throw questions.
What's this?
Happy to answer.
Oops.
There we go.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, and then one of
I was gonna say for anybody who has questions, down under the with the flag is authenticity points. For 1 point, you can ask a question.
there you go. That makes it so much easier to actually to catch it.
Yep.
So one thing that we talked a little bit about before stream and I wanted to poke at, because we've kind of talked a lot about world building with just kind of humans and whatnot, and now we just want to touch a little bit on the not keeping your stereotypes even within fantasy of the we can get away from the orcs are always evil, terrible things, and the elves are always these beautiful, wonderful, smug, smarmy know-it-alls that, we can move away from all of that
Well,
into stuff that's much more interesting.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, if you actually look at the elven mythologies, you've got.
Oh, they're so different than the Tolkien ones that we've
Oh,
all just kind of come to know.
yeah. I'm sorry, but because you've got the Slua, the She, the Banshee, the and I mean the thing is, most Tolkien-esque elves are She or the
Mhm.
Tuatha De Danann. Well, actually, pronounce it
Yeah,
correctly is
it's
Tuatha
the.
De Danann.
I am terrible at pronouncing things. I've always been awful, so I am so glad to let you do that. But yeah, it's true. There is so much more to it than just the very kind of stereotyped characters. So if you can add in more nuance to it, like you were talking about earlier, the paladin orc,
Yep.
the one that has goodness to it, or even if it is going to still be an antagonist in your story, it can still be one that has a virtuous concept that isn't barbarous. And like, I hate that concept of using the words like barbarous and savagery and whatnot, because they have heavy racist connotations to it that are good to stay away from whenever possible.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, because I mean, was actually playing a lawful good orc paladin who was trying to show
Yeah.
his people a better way. So he was collecting the
Mm-hmm.
clans, and he had half the clans, and somebody else had the other half, and they're fighting for control. Because in order to show his
Yeah.
people a better way, first he had to get the majority of the clans under his control.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's not going to work. So
Yeah.
as soon as he defeated the leader of the other army, the other clans, he was grabbed by the orc god, who is of course lawful evil, and he
Of
was
course.
he was given an ultimatum: either break
Yeah.
his ethos and kill the god of war, who is tied to a chair and defenseless, or break his ethos and let the other god wipe out the entire nation, the entire race.
Oof. Genocide's never a good look.
Thing was, the way he looked at it, the if he actually look, and yes, that is correct. Tuatha De Danann as Tuatha De Danann. Yes. Um, the way he looked at it was
Okay.
the good of the many outweighs the good of the few.
Yes.
So, in order to save as many people as he could, his only choice, his only option, was to kill the unarmed god
Mm-hmm.
sitting there.
Yeah.
And it didn't break his ethos
Yeah.
because of it.
Yeah. And those are always fun questions to throw in. And it's always a very interesting debate when you can pull in the good of the few versus the good of the many.
Ah, Stargirl has a question.
I
Do,
love it.
do you have any suggestions on how to write a richly diverse world without coding real-world racial stereotypes into the narrative? Example, avoiding tropes like noble savage, primitive tribesman, etc. Any ideas for how you'd add any ideas you'd add to a checklist?
All right. Um, so the way that I approach that is to so for tropes like noble savage, for primitive tribesmen in particular, you're looking at a contrast of technology. There is usually what you're talking about when you're saying someone is more primitive than another. So you can have different technological stages, but you can avoid coding in calling them primitive by a show of respect. So it can be, and you don't, have some respect in the way that you write about that character, about the cultures, which is different than other characters having respect. Because conflict obviously still needs to happen, and conflicts happen in worlds. So there are going to be racists in your world, probably. There's going to be discrimination in your world. But if you can color it through a lens that says, this is a terrible way to think, you are still helping to bring in an overall idea of inclusivity. And if you can show too, for a tribe that has different or less technology, there's still, whenever we move forward in tech, we lose something, we forget about something. So you get the opportunity to show then from a primitive area of a lesser technology something that can still work or work better. And then as far as avoiding noble savage, what are your thoughts on that one, Siobhan? I'll let you take that
Well,
half of it.
For noble savage, I mean, that's usually in reference to like the indigenous peoples, because they
Yeah.
do have, and I'm not talking just indigenous of North America. I'm talking indigenous peoples of Australia, Tasmania, Hawaii, because they're all
Yeah.
they're noble people, and what classes them as savage is because others look at them and go, "Oh, you do that." It's perspective, and perspectives can
Yeah.
change. I mean, I was thinking about the primitive tribesmen, right? So yeah, sure, they might not have the technology advancement that everybody else does, but they probably have the intellectual advancement that the others don't. High philosophers.
Yeah.
So it's
And
all a
that's
matter of
the other thing too,
perspective
is that,
too.
yeah, and give a reason why, for potentially a technological difference. Is it because, yeah, they have valued art over the technology advancement? Is it that they have a rich culture in a different area that is more advanced than another? There's beautiful ways to show contrast and whatnot between different cultures, that you can create that diversity without having a like, oh, those poor little souls on the savannah who don't know how to do anything technologically advanced. Is like, yeah, but
They know how to live
they
on the
will
off
have
the
other
land.
things that they're
They know how to,
much better at.
yeah, because they know how to
Yeah,
live off the land. They know how to
exactly.
coexist. They don't
Yeah.
overhunt. They don't. I mean, that's just it. That's the whole thing. That's your typical noble savage. Those who actually have respect for the land that they're on and live in harmony
Mm-hmm.
with it.
And you can change it from being, again, a noble savage being a minority to, instead of the like, oh, the outlier, it can be they are, because noble savage often is this is the minority group. Again, it can be here is the majority having a respect for this and whatnot, that can also then prevent that noble savage kind of trope popping up. And you can also have strong differences between matriarchal and patriarchal societies, or polygamous versus monotheistic, or monogamous and polytheistic. I'm just throwing around all of my words, but it's that you can have really strong contrasts in concepts with being able to without downcasting on it.
Well, yeah, I mean, because if you want to get into it, you could also go with the polyamorous, because they don't have to be polygamous, but it could be polyamorous.
Exactly. How to avoid. I mean, if you want to avoid it, you just don't do it. But you can reframe it to make a stronger society,
Yeah,
so stronger contrast in your world for that.
asking how to avoid the trope.
Um,
To avoid the trope, you, first of all, you don't use it. They're not a noble savage.
yeah.
They are a people in your world who have just as much respect and uh, knowledge as everybody else. Their knowledge just happens to be in a different area.
Hmm. I think that's the thing, is that it's also the language that you use to describe them.
Yeah,
You avoid calling them savage if you want to avoid the noble savage. You avoid calling them primitive. Or again, if you are requiring to use that word, then you frame it in this is what a racist says, a racist character of yours says.
yeah.
This is, what you do. Because conflicts still have to happen in our books. There is no way to have a conflict-free book as far as I'm concerned. And these are conflicts that are important issues to tackle in fiction, I think. I think that you can't and shouldn't back away from them. But it is a matter of, even talking to the groups that you're pulling from. If you're trying to make sure that you're not writing a Native American as a noble savage, then you talk to Native Americans, you talk to different tribes, and you sort out how they would like to have their representation.
I mean, I grew up in a small town right near a native reserve. I have a lot of native friends, so these are conversations I have all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because, like I said, I respect the culture. Doesn't mean that I'm going to steal it, because it's not my culture.
Yeah.
So I get people when
There's
I
a
start writing
lot
about
of
other stuff.
research.
Yeah, and I will actually take my stuff and say, "Can you look this over and see if it's going to be offensive?"
Yeah, absolutely. And that is, I know one thing that is great to do, especially as we're moving out of the pandemic, out of COVID, is to contact cultural centers. Um, Go and reach out to, I know when I was living in Calgary, there was Global Fest every September. And I loved getting to go because there was different pavilions from different countries and different cultures and whatnot that you could go and you could talk to people and you could make those connections and network, so that when you are, for me it was when I'm trying to pull from these different cultures, that I am making sure that I can honor them as best as possible, which means both including positives and negatives, since you don't want to put people on a pedestal either, because that just it's a different kind of dehumanization when you make them perfect. But I'm sorry, Star Girl, that we're not quite getting what you're asking. Um,
Yeah, honestly, Stargo, I don't think you can quite completely avoid a trope, which is why you have to reframe it. Unfortunately, but you reframe it in a way that it's not a personal opinion. It's like one character in the book or one section.
yeah,
Because I mean, it would be easier if we had our third panelist,
yeah,
who actually is a person of color, so that we could.
have that additional perspective, because that is the thing, is I can talk to you guys a lot about what it's like to live as a disabled woman in an able-bodied culture, but it is, as you can see, I am very white. So all of the advice that I can give about avoiding racism is take it with a massive grain of salt. Massive grain of salt, because anything I tell you, you might very well have a person of color come and say, yeah, don't do what the white woman said. Do this instead. Which is 100% fair. 100%.
Which is why I said I look for the, if I'm starting a representation, I will go to those
Yes.
people and ask them to check.
Yes, absolutely. So ecological research on living on the land would look like and apply to creating a unique culture based off that source. Yes, absolutely. That's an awesome way to do it, especially for your world building of if you have built like legitimately the ground up for your world and you know what your resources are. It is okay, well, what people live around those resources? How are those resources utilized? And therefore, how does that change a culture? Because you're right, there are very different cultures that come from even a Pacific Northwest rainforest versus the Amazonian rainforests.
Oh yeah, I mean,
So,
if you look at the Haida people of the
mhm,
Queen Charlotte Islands, and try to compare them to, I think it was the Cree, or in the in Washington. I know the Okanagan were
mhm.
down there as well, though,
Yeah,
and they're completely different because
yeah,
it all depends on what they're living off of. And if
yes.
as soon as you start, if you ever want to talk to someone who actually has knowledge about that, for the research and living off the land would look like, come talk to me. I mean that because I'm a druid, so that's part of what I study.
Hmm.
Living in harmony with the land.
Absolutely. And that's the thing too, is that with the beauty of something like WriterCon is that, or Writer Conduit, there are so many voices and experiences that you can poke at and get information from, that this is an excellent time for networking so that you can do a very effective, very inclusive world building. Did we lose?
Sorry.
All good.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, no,
Okay.
I'm trying to juggle.
Yeah, you have a lot on your plate today. I am, again, everyone who does hosting for these panels, I am so thankful for and in awe of, because there has been a lot going on with Writers Conduit. It has been quite tricky getting everything sorted and organized, I know, this year, and lots to work on for next year. But it has been, again, as just a panelist, the fact that there have been people that I can just show up and talk to has been excellent and a lot of fun. So yeah, thank you. Um, but yeah, it's the go and talk to people. I think that's one of the things that is kind of scary as a writer. We all like to kind of hermit and hide with our books and our screens and not have to necessarily talk to people. But you will be able to do the most effective and inclusive and heartfelt world building if you just talk to people that are involved in one way or another. I was really lucky that when the last couple of years for the draft of The Dying Sun, I was living in an apartment complex where there was a huge Muslim community, and all of the common areas, like I always knew when it was Ramadan because there were always huge parties after the sunset, and everything was just awesome to be able to just talk to my neighbors and get more information so that I could change things before going to publishing as necessary to make sure that I wasn't going to be making anyone feel again when they pick up my book going, be like, oh man, another freaking white person writing stupid things.
Well, here's the other thing too: is when you're talking about another culture, the best way to get a point across is food.
Oh yeah. Oh
The
yeah.
smells, the tastes, the textures that's in your mouth.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
one
Yeah.
thing that most people forget about is that food has a texture as you're
Yes.
eating it.
Yeah. Now I really want baklava. But that is the other thing. Is like you absolutely should, from the cultures you're pulling from, go and make some of the food. And if you're not a good cook, pick up some food from those different cultures because there is so much history written into ethnic dishes.
Oh, but the thing is make sure it is not designed for the white man palate.
Yes. Oh my god, yes. Yeah, otherwise it's not, yeah. I just, since I want to catch up, there's a new comments in chat and
Keolio
conversation.
was adding to the conversation at Storygirl in writing the other bring in sensitivity consultant.
Yes.
We can do research and talk to people, but ultimately bringing in someone who specializes around the concepts that microcultures struggle against.
Definitely.
Stick this out of the fantasy frame and consider sci-fi instead. I have written a setting where the sentient alien protagonist race is long-lived and has an ethos which might be comparable to some indigenous anarchic ethical moral frameworks. Huh. So we're changing it from fantasy to sci-fi. That's not a problem. So
No.
but there's no coding of this species as any kind of human culture. Ah. Now, see, but the thing is, at that point, because you're saying it's similar, or like the ethos is comparable, how do we know that the alien species isn't the one that brought the that those frameworks and stuff to the indigenous, and that's the problem. But then again, like I said, we're talking sci-fi. Like you said, there's no species, no human culture coding, so I mean, you don't have to have it. You can just do. There are no humans in the setting. Okay.
So I would say that my question, Story Girl, is what are the interactions with the other races? It would be my question. Since no humans, if you're very far away from the human issues, what are the interactions between them and other races? What are the other races like? Because I think we know best through contrast. We learn great through contrast. So you're gonna tell people will see that these aliens are long-lived and anarchic and their ethical moral frameworks leaning towards indigenous are, but even then with saying indigenous, it depends on what cultures you're pulling from for that indigenous aspect. But you're getting most of it through the contrast. So if
give
you're
me
not
2
having anyone
seconds. I
referring
need
to
to
them
close
as
Discord and
like noble
open
savage or anything like that, I think that
OBS
you
Live.
don't have to
Chat amongst
worry
yourselves.
too much about that being read into your stuff, but I'm happy to take a look at it to be able to talk in a bit more detail in the particulars.
Yes, there are 2, obviously.
If that makes sense.
It looks good. It looks good.
It does look really good.
I could not allow Shy to be the shortest haired person in the planning committee.
On the sides, on the sides. But I'm not, of course.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing 2 conversations at once.
As active?
Oh no. Well, yes, because I realize we are getting close to what you have to.
All right, I am
for your next hosting.
That's not.
Yep.
There we go.
But yeah, so Star
Selecting
Girl,
the correct thing.
since we are
I
like
am
close to the end,
here.
please feel free to reach
Siobhan
out to me.
is
I
here.
am on Twitch at
Shyred
twitch.com
Fox is
or
here, and I
twitch.tv
think I
/
forgot to put
ljstantonauthor.
Author Goddess in, but I do have one for you.
So
And here's Jasmine.
feel free to send me a whisper. I'm on the Writer CONduit Discord.
Hang on, I'm importing it.
And I
I'm
have
importing
all
it
of
now.
my
I have one
socials,
for you.
all of
It's
that,
just getting to it.
all of that done, so that it's a little bit easier to have a discussion on it with when I can maybe get a little bit more from you as far as like what exactly
Yes, this one nameplate
might help.
There we go.
But
and
I
I
think
have you
that
as Sarah. Is
even
that
at the end of the day, the fact that there is an awareness of wanting to do better, of not wanting to pull in racist tropes, of having that awareness is going to make you a better writer. It's going to make you a better world builder. Because you are
and we
trying
have everybody nameplated.
I think the people that do the worst world building are the people that aren't aware or deliberately are not aware of the pitfalls that come with it.
Yeah, that's true, and I mean
that might be it.
Yeah, it definitely sounds
it's
like
always
a fan.
fun, but because you're getting close
I think
to
the
the
air
end,
conditioning is running.
I think
will
it's
keep
time
myself
to
muted as much as possible.
Okay.
say where you can be found.
Let
everybody know where you can be found online.
Yes.
All right.
So my
we are pretty
company
much ready
website
to go live.
is swordandboard.gg.
I think so.
And I have a Sword
Nobody's
and Board
going
Discord,
to be able to hear us
and all
for
of that
this
is
first
on
part,
the Writers
but
CONduit
I'm
Discord. So if you guys are in
the
there, I a little earlier today went and posted all of my socials. I'm on Twitter.
Oh, I
it's,
forgot to change my panel information.
at
Hang on, I'm
Stanton
stopping the stream.
_LJ. And then my Instagram is at Stanton _LJ because we made this really easy. And then I am also on Facebook.
In the middle of an insane heat wave.
But I am on
my
Facebook
bedroom
as
is 42 degrees Celsius.
under just
Like,
LJ Stanton.
It is so hot in here right now, and I'm like, I'm terrified I'm
Do
going
we
to get
have
sick.
a second Discord chat going? Also, hello, Caroline.
Take care of yourself. You are more important.
Yes.
I don't know where that is.
Okay. Fixed the stream information. Let's try that one more time.
Which Discord? Now you have me paranoid.
Oh yeah, sorry, I do, and I gotta figure out how to fix that. Sorry.
I just realized
they're hearing my.
Won't be looking at all of your lovely faces because I just
So
realized
Perfect, that makes sense. Gotcha.
how the panel
gotcha.
layout was based on full screen Chrome. Oops.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
So I will do that one.
Okay.
There. Sorry about that, people. Yeah, I completely forgot about that because I'm in the process of bouncing between from one stream to the next because I'm on the next panel over there.
Yeah.
I do apologize about
you've
that.
Been very busy.
So.
But yeah, so can be checked out just all through the Writers Conduits. All my information is just on there, and I can plug my book for just 2 seconds, which is The Dying Sun. It's back there. It's available pretty much anywhere that books can be purchased. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble. It's through Chapters in Indigo as well for those of you in Canada. And you can also get it off of bookshop.org. And there's also an ebook, and it is in hardcover. So that is all of my stuff.
All right on. And I'd like so we will be raiding into the mythology in writing on Eli Quake's
Stream.
Thank you. Yeah. Channel.
Words are hard.
Especially when you've been talking half the day.
Yeah.
The next ones are all listed, like the events. Right there, yep. And there's one that are live currently, so yeah. Stream those go away. And thank you, Carolyn, for letting me know about that. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
So
Well, thank you for hosting.
Thank you for being here, and thank you, audience, for coming.
Yeah. And I hope to be able to continue this conversation with any of you that would like to reach out. I'm always happy to beta read for people and help out in whatever way I can with the writing community, because we're all in this together.
Well, in that case, maybe I'll have you as one of my beta readers.
I will happily do that. Happily. Like, 100%. Send me a copy. I will read it for you. And I will give you feedback. I love being able to do that.
Yeah, well, for me, well, I guess I'll be having to do this one in the next stream anyway, so I will not give all my locations yet. I'll be doing that in the next stream.
Sounds good.
So we are going to... Well, we still have a couple more minutes, so if we... For any last minute questions?
If not, I can just, I can fill space. I'm very good at just talking to fill space if we need that, because I always have things to talk about, especially when it comes to, like, I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I have a service dog. There are many things that are exciting about that you can add into your books and your world building.
Service puppy? Banshee?
Come here. Have puppies reading the stream for a moment. If Kieran's still around, Kieran can bring my kitten. Because kittens should always read the stream.
Come on. Come here. You silly puppy. Come here. Come on. There's my big puppy. There's my baby girl.
Oh my goodness. There we go.
Down. Down. Good girl.
Yeah. No.
Sit.
Well, I have put in a request for Kid to show up, so
Yep.
Getting him dropped off. So, what is Puppy's name?
Banshee. And it is spelled in the Old Gaelic.
It was an excellent name. Excellent name.
So of course nobody's gonna be able to understand say it when if I spell it.
Yeah. We'll say we have little Mister. This is Kanan.
Banshee,
He is
look.
all of like. How old are you, bud? I don't even remember anymore. Well, thank you, Story Girl, for hanging around. I am sorry that I couldn't give you a better answer. I do feel bad for that. Please reach out. I'm happy to talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, baby girl, yeah.
And I just lost my service dog. He apparently has ditched me now.
Yeah, well, so. Maybe your service dog is going to get your meds and telling you to take them.
Oh, probably. Probably. It's
Speaking
like the
of
best and
which,
worst thing.
For those who do have meds to take your meds.
We are at the top of the hour, so if anybody has medications they're supposed to take right now, also remember to hydrate, drink water.
Yep. And
eat
remember,
food.
the raid call for CONduit is continuing CONduit. Capital CON on both CONduit and continuing. And if you want to use my raid call, it is stay true. Stay true to yourselves and stay true to your dreams.
That is beautiful.
Yeah. And so we are off to raid. Thank you for coming and have a good day.
Thank you. All right, and I will hop off the call so that you can get on to your next panel.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Sorry.
We'll just go ahead and not play that.
Oh.
I made it.
Yay!